Yo, what's going on? Today I'm back with another video. Today we're going to be going over the Love Island Dynasty League. Going to be doing some team reviews, talking about future direction for the players, for what their team should do, like what moves I would make if I had control of these teams. But first, we're going to take a look at the league rules. Some pretty standard stuff, nothing crazy. 12 team, full PPR. Decided to add in a tight end premium to the league. So tight ends will gain 1.5 points per reception, while everybody else will only get 1 point per reception. Still standard with head-to-head scoring. And just like the other league, we did no divisions, and the top 8 teams will make the playoffs. We just want the best 8 teams to make the playoffs no matter what. Nothing screwy with the divisions, things like that. So now we're going to take a look at the roster construction. We are in a super flex league, so we have one quarterback and also a super flex, which you can start a second quarterback every week. But other than that, we just have 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. We like having that extra wide receiver slot, make it a little bit more of a tough choice between RBs and receivers. 1 tight end, and we have 2 flex this time instead of 1 flex. And then rocking 15 bench spots with 3 taxis and 2 IR. So we're going to jump over and take a look at our first team. We're going to be taking a look at Dan's team. So first off, let's take a look at his starting lineup. We got Bryce Young, Derrick Henry, DeAndre Swift, Devontae Adams, Jalen Hyatt, Garrett Wilson, Dalton Schultz, Isaiah Pacheco, Adam Thielen, and Derek Carr. So overall, the starting lineup seems to be a little mismatchy. Like, we're not fully young, we're not fully old. I would say we got a decent mix of old and young guys, which is not a bad way to start your lineup. Now we'll throw up the bench spots as well as his picks. When taking a look at this team, he didn't have anybody in the IR, and he did not have anybody on the taxi squad right now. So that's something he should be looking to take advantage of. Like, he could throw some guys on his taxi squad, like Jalen Hyatt. I mean, I know he's got him possibly starting this year, but he could possibly throw him on there. I would say definitely throw Rashee Rice on the taxi squad. But other than that, he doesn't have any other rookies that he could utilize the taxi squad position for. Definitely not Bryce Young. He's going to need to use him on a week-to-week basis. But that's what I would do. So let's break down each position group by one by one. So starting off with the quarterbacks, we've got Bryce Young, Derek Carr, Carson Wentz, PJ Walker. So I give this grade overall about a C+. Bryce Young's a great stud young QB we got. He should be pretty promising, and I would be happy about that if I were you. He also has Derek Carr, who's a serviceable starter right now. He might not have a ton of longevity left in the league, but he's somebody that we can start in our Superflex every week. It's not a bad start. Like Carson Wentz and PJ Walker, 2 guys that aren't really worth a ton, but I guess you can hold the flyer. Maybe Carson Wentz signs with the Las Vegas Raiders if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't play, but something we just got to wait and see. Like, we got 2 quarterbacks, and when one of those guys are on bye week, we're going to have to play a position guy in those spots, So that's why I ended up going with a C+. We got 1 nice young guy. We got 1 older guy. We should be okay to put up some decent points. It's just you really got to hope Bryce Young pans out this year if you want to be able to do anything. So then taking a look at the running backs, we got Derrick Henry, DeAndre Swift, Isaiah Pacheco, Michael Carter, and then Kyron Williams. So we don't have a ton of running back depth on this team. We only have 5 running backs when it comes to being able to have 15 bench spots. Like, 5 running backs isn't a ton. Derrick Henry's getting up there in age. He could ultimately fall off soon. DeAndre Swift is still young, but he's going through a weird value change right now, shifting teams to Philadelphia. People aren't really sure what he's going to be like. A guy that I was loving last year, DeAndre Swift, I thought he was going to be amazing for your dynasty team. Well, he unfortunately has lost a lot of value since then. Isaiah Pacheco, that was a nice find. You lucked into that one probably late in the draft or in your rookie draft. I feel like with the youngness of DeAndre Swift and Isaiah Pacheco, those two guys being pretty young could ultimately carry your team down the line. We don't think Michael Carter and Kyron Williams are going to be really anything. But yeah, again, they're still worth holding on in case something happens, just as a handcuff, and that's all. So ultimately decided to go with the B- on these RBs just because we have some youth in this room. But I think we should be able to put up some good production with these three guys. But outside of the three guys, we don't have much depth in the running back room. So next, we're going to take a look at the wide receivers. Wide receivers, I'm going to give this a B rating. We got Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Hyatt, Adam Thielen, Rashee Rice, Tyler Boyd, and a bunch of other guys on the bench for wide receivers. We got a ton of backups that we could possibly use. So Devontae Adams, yes, he's gonna be Devontae Adams. He's one of the best receivers in the league. Might take a little tick down this year with Jimmy Garoppolo. Also, he's getting a little bit older, kind of in the same boat as Derrick Henry, getting a little bit older, but still definitely going to be able to produce for you this year. But you might only have him on your team for another year to two where he's going to be usable. Garrett Wilson, I think he's by far and away your best player on this team. He's definitely worth the most out of anybody on this team. You could hold him. You could try to possibly sell him and gain a lot more capital back. But honestly, I would probably still try to hold him. He's definitely your best piece. You need to build around him. He's one of your pillars, I would say. He's probably your only pillar that you have on this squad. Jalen Hyatt, he's kind of like a flyer on a rookie receiver. His guy, I wasn't a big fan of as a prospect, but just because of his situation on the Giants, I think he's an okay guy to have. I don't necessarily know if I would be starting him week one like how he has right here. I'd maybe try to start a guy like Tyler Boyd over him just to start the year, see how high it does, if he's getting any volume kind of thing. And then Adam Thielen, changing teams, he's another one that's getting really old. He could experience that fall off soon, but he should be able to produce enough for you again this year to be pretty solid. So wide receiver group, I have a B just because we have a bunch of good depth. Like Rashee Rice is another flyer we have. Tyler Boyd, he's getting old, but he's that third receiver on the Bengals if Jamar Chase or T. Higgins gets hurt. Tyler Boyd's going to be a nice fill-in. Curtis Samuel, he's another one. You don't know. He might get a shot to play this year. We expect the Jahan Dotson breakout to happen. We expect Terry McLaurin to be good, but Curtis Samuel could still find his way into that wide receiver 3 role. Robbie Chosen Anderson, however you say his name, I don't expect him to be a ton. He's probably not somebody we're going to be able to start. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, with the departure of Juju, he might get a little more volume, but that's a muddy receiver room. We don't know exactly what's going on. Mecole Hardman, another guy that just left the Chiefs. He could find his way into some volume with the Jets, but probably not enough to be sustainable for us to start every week. And then we got Chase Claypool, who I don't really expect to be much. Still pretty young, though, so worth the hold. So overall, I think for the wide receiver room, we have some decent guys, but I don't know if we have enough to fully fill a starting lineup throughout the entire year through bye weeks and everything. We have some depth, but it's not amazing depth. It's just okay. These are guys that can possibly fill in the role, maybe score a touchdown 3 times in the year kind of thing. Not a bunch of depth in the receiver position that is good. So and then last, we're going to take a look at the tight ends. We got Dalton Schultz, Zach Ertz, Tyler Higbee, Jonnu Smith, Brevin Jordan. I would say the tight end room, along with the wide receiver room, are the 2 best position groups on his team. Just because I think tight end, he's got a lot of good depth. I think Dalton Schultz is going to be pretty good in Houston this year. Tyler Higbee can be pretty solid, I think, with the Rams again. I think he could find his way into being Matt Stafford's second option, maybe even third option, something like that. And not too bad. I think we have enough to stay afloat with the tight end position. These guys are getting older, like Zach Ertz. He's definitely getting older. If he comes back and plays well, though, he could be a nice another piece you could play. You might even find yourself having to start 2 tight ends in a week just to fill the flex spots. Schultz is he's not super old, but he's, getting closer to it. Tyler Higbee, he's in the middle range of his old and young. So, I think the tight end room is pretty strong here. We have Dalton Schultz, our starter every week, and Tyler Higbee can fill in when we need. Jonnu Smith going to Atlanta with one of his former coaches. We could luck into something there, which would be nice. But Brevin Jordan, he's somebody I don't really think we're going to get much out of. So overall, I don't think this team is too strong when it comes to win now. We're talking about his picks. He still has all of his picks for next year, for the next 3 years, which I think is pretty good, except for he doesn't have his own second in 2025, but he has somebody else's second. And we have an extra third in 2024. So, like, my final verdict for this team is I think you need to either sell or buy. You need to choose a path for your team. Like, I feel like your team has no direction currently. Like, you're just kind of middling around. You're going to be in the middle of the pack. You might sneak into the playoffs and finish in the 8th seed, and maybe you could win a game in the playoffs. I don't think there's a high chance, but you could find your way into the playoffs, or you could just barely miss and end up 4th to last, and then what are you going to do? Like, I think you need to ultimately choose a direction for your team. So if you're going to buy people, we got to go sell some of these young guys. Like, if I were you, I don't think you can get a ton for him, but if you're going to go buy people, you got to sell Jalen Hyatt, go get a guy, like, pair him with one of your picks, and go get a better receiver. Like, pair Jalen Hyatt and a first to go get a nice, solid receiver. Maybe you could get a guy like Brandon Ayuk. Might be a little tough, but I think, hey, it's worth a chance. Throw the dart out there, see if it sticks, kind of thing. Maybe another guy you could get, maybe a guy like Christian Kirk. He's a little bit older, but he's not young. But those are two guys that could help you win this year. That, like, if you want to go buy, you want to compete, possibly win that money this year. Like, those, like, some guys I would say you have to, like, consider about going to getting. So if you're going to buy, you're going to have to sell these picks if you want a chance to compete. But I don't think that would be in our best interest. I think with this team, we would be wanting to look to sell, especially because we have some of these expiring assets, I would call them. So, like Derrick Henry, he's already 30 years old. We know 30 years old is at that point for running backs where they're reaching the cliff. Now, I'm not going to be the guy to say Derrick Henry's going to fall off, but you know it's going to happen at some point. And I would say it's more likely than not going to happen in the next 2 years. So do you want to be stuck with a guy that's going to end up putting zeros in your lineup for the next after 2 years worth of production? Or you want to get some value back, rebuild your team a little bit, get younger so you can possibly open that window, the win window up sooner. Devontae Adams is another guy that I would talk about like the same way as Derrick Henry. He's getting up there in age. He's already 30. Now, wide receivers can be sustainable a little bit longer than running backs. So I don't think he's like as imperative to sell. But if I get an offer for Devontae Adams, I'm going to be looking at it and considering it deeply. If it's me getting younger, me acquiring picks, acquiring other younger assets for next year that we can build to come. Another guy I would look to sell is maybe Adam Thielen. You might not get a ton for him. I would say maybe wait till the season starts, see if he has a couple big weeks, then sell him off right away. But it's all depending on how you feel. If he's going to do good in the beginning of the year, he's going to do worse to start the year. But Adam Thielen's a good one to sell off. And I think Derek Carr is another one that we want to sell. Sell Derek Carr to a competing team. He's a great quarterback that you want to be starting in your super flex. Like, a team would love to have him as his QB2 or QB3. So find a QB needy team and go sell them Derek Carr. Get like a second round pick back, or since it's a win now team, most likely you're going to sell to, maybe you'll get a late first. You might have to sweeten the pot a little bit for him, but go get something in return for Derek Carr, and then that'll help you if you want to sell, if you want to work towards a rebuild. Selling Derek Carr you won't have another QB to start in your super flex, so you're going to be inherently scoring less points, and you have a better shot at getting that first overall pick next year, which could be some very big names like Marvin Harrison Jr. or Caleb Williams. So my overall final verdict for this team is I think that you got to pick a direction for your team. You got to sell or you got to buy. There's no need to be sitting in the middle of the league. Nothing happens for finishing 6th or 7th overall. You want to either finish first or finish last, in my opinion. That's how I take the approach for Dynasty. But thank you, Dan, for letting me look at your team. I wish you good luck in your team, either that's rebuilding or going all in for it next year. Alrighty, so taking a look at our next team, for our Dynasty breakdowns, we're going to be looking at I's team, okay? So first, let's take a look at a starting lineup, as we did for Dan's team. We got Jared Goff, Alvin Kamara, Tony Pollard, Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, Travis Kelce, Brandon Cooks, James Cook, and Matt Stafford. So ultimately, the starting lineup looks pretty solid on paper, right? Like, I think we got a nice. This is kind of similar to Dan's team. Like, we got a nice mix of younger and old guys. That ultimately, I think we could have a nice team putting up some good points this upcoming season. So let's go ahead and let's add in the benches and the draft picks. There's a couple names that stand out. Really, only one name stands out on the bench. We got C.J. Stroud. Oh, that's a really nice guy to have on the bench. Taking a look at his picks, looks like 2025. He's got a really good, nice amount of picks. 2 seconds, 2/3, 2/4. Missing our second in 2024, but ultimately I think that's okay. So let's, just like Dan's team, let's go ahead. Let's break it down position by position. So when it comes to quarterback room, we got Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, C.J. Stroud. Don't have any other quarterbacks on the team other than those three guys, but from my opinion, I think those three guys are pretty serviceable. We don't have an elite quarterback, right? We don't have that guy that's going to go out and win our weeks. Well, I'd say we have a bunch of like quarterback twos right now. So, Jared Goff, he's a serviceable guy. He'll be a mid QB too. Really need Matt Stafford to make a comeback this year, which he's getting close to the end of his career too, I would believe as well. But then we got C.J. Stroud, who's a nice young prospect that I'm really happy to see on this squad. So overall, a B- for the quarterback room. I think it's pretty solid right now. It's pretty serviceable. If C.J. Stroud has a nice breakout year, he could slide his way into the starting lineup over Matt Stafford in the Superflex, and I would be pretty happy about that. But Stroud's another one. He should be one of our guys that we build around for years to come, kind of thing. And Jared Goff, he's not super old, but he still has a good contract. You should be able to use him for the next few years. So ultimately, I think the QB room's pretty good, pretty solid. Wouldn't be mad if I had this team for the QBs. Taking a look at running backs, I'm gonna give a B for the running backs. So now we do have Alvin Kamara, who's going to be suspended for 3 weeks. We got to keep that in mind. Alvin Kamara is also a guy that he's not super old again either. He's probably in about the mid 27, 28 range. So he's getting there when it comes to age. And you see they drafted Kondre Miller behind him, and they just signed Jamal Williams to a 3-year deal. So Kamara could be close to on his way out of the system, out of New Orleans kind of thing, close to retirement. But Tony Pollard is a great young back we got in Dallas. He should be scoring a lot of points this year. James Cook's not a guy I'm a huge on, but there's definitely opportunity there for him in Buffalo. He needs to seize the day kind of thing. So Pollard and James Cook, Pollard's definitely one of our pillars as well. He's a nice young asset that we need to build our team around future. Other than that, on the bench, Latavius Murray, Jared McKinnon, Zeke, Rojo, Naeem Hines, Singletary, Eno Benjamin. We got, I would say, a bunch of okay guys. Nobody really that we're ready to plug into our lineup on a weekly basis if we need to. If we have an injury, maybe Zeke gets to sign somewhere else. That would help us out a ton. Jerick McKinnon was usable for a little bit last year. He would be a guy that, hey, you might luck into your way to some more production with him. Other than that, I don't think any of these other running backs will be usable. Maybe Devin Singletary will get some reps in Houston, but I wouldn't be counting on that as well. So we got I would say at least 2 solid running backs that we're starting every week in Tony Pollard, James Cook, and then 3 once Kamara comes back from suspension, which is good. We're able to fill in one of our flex spots with the running back position. So now we can take a look at the wide receiver depth. Wide receiver position, I also give this a B rank. So Cooper Kupp, that's our stud. That's our guy that's scoring the most amount of points possible for us this week. I also really like that we have the Stafford and Kupp stack. So if Los Angeles turns it around this year, makes a nice year for them for the Rams, Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp could be scoring a lot of points for you. We got Mike Evans with a new quarterback, which I don't love, but it's still Mike Evans. He's been solid every year of his career. He's getting up there in age. Cooper Kupp's also getting a little bit older because he was a late commit out of college, but these guys are still going to be certified putting up points for you every week. Tyler Lockett's the same way. I think he's about eclipsing 30 years old as well. But he should be putting up points. He could see a little bit of a downtick this year with the acquisition of Jackson Smith and Jigba, but you never know. You never know how it's going to work out. They could slowly ease JSN into this being a next year kind of thing. We just have to wait and see how that works out. But Tyler Lockett, I think he could be scoring points. Brandon Cook's moving over to Dallas. I think that's a nice flex play for you every week. I feel like he's going to be putting up some solid points for you over in Dallas, being the wide receiver too. I think he easily jumps Michael Gallup. And Tony Pollard will get some nice work out of the backfield. But Brandon Cook should be the wide receiver too for Dak. And I think it would be a nice solid player for you to start in your lineup every week in that flex spot. But then going to the bench, we got Khalif Raymond, Slayton, Zacchaeus, KJ Hamler. That kind of stinks what happened with KJ Hamler. But Van Jefferson, Isaiah Hodgins. So kind of similar to the running back room. We got some guys that could ultimately make that jump into being a guy that we could start, like Van Jefferson. If it's not Tyler Higbee, like I was saying with Dan's team, if it's not Tyler Higbee getting that wide receiver 2 stuff, it could be Van Jefferson, and that would be a nice, then he would have a triple stack with the Rams guys, which would not be bad. Isaiah Hodgins, I talked about before again as well. The Giants' receiving room is a little muddy. We don't know who's going to play. He also has Darius Slayton, so he's got 2, I would say, I count him as lottery picks kind of thing. You got Slayton and Hodgins. We know a lot of the Giants receivers get injured every year kind of thing. It's a really weird thing that happens, honestly, but Hodgins and Slayton, like, they're both 2 guys that could they could find themselves into some volume if other guys get hurt or just playing with Daniel Jones. Like, Slayton has been usable in the past. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again. So overall, I think this wide receiver room is pretty solid again. Also a B. And then we take a look at the tight end room. You know, we got the man Travis Kelce. He's getting up there in age, but man, I don't know what you can do with him. He's gonna be scoring a lot of points for you every week still. I still heavily believe in him. But after Travis Kelce's when it gets a little scary, all we got is Donald Parham and Luke Schoonmaker. So that's why I couldn't give an A for this tight end room, because simply we don't have any depth. Like, if Travis Kelce gets hurt, we're screwed at the tight end position. And also on that bye week, we're got to start Luke Schoonmaker if he finds his way into volume. So I would still say the tight end is the strongest room, though, simply having the best tight end in the league. So overall for I's team, I think this looks pretty solid. And I think he has a decision to make as well. He's also kind of similar to Dan's team, where he's got to make a decision. I call him a last chance team. Like, this is his last chance, I believe, at trying to push for a chip. I think he could have the star power to go win that championship this year. I think he might need to sell a first or some picks, maybe one of those seconds he has in 2025. If he wants to go push for that win this year, he could sell some of those picks and get some extra depth pieces, some guys that he can plug into his lineup every week to fill in for bye weeks, to fill in for Alvin Kamara's suspension. He has a chance to win this year, but he also has some expiring players. Alvin Kamara, Travis Kelce, Tyler Lockett, Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp. His whole receiver room is pretty old. So, like, once these guys are getting up there in age, like, he's going to have to sell them off soon, or he's just going to have to take the hit when it happens and lose all that value. So, kind of similar to Dan's team, I think he would benefit more from trying to sell and start fresh kind of thing. Build around C.J. Stroud, build around Tony Pollard for the future. But I also think Tony Pollard would be a nice piece to sell and get a ton of value from. He's, being a little bit younger, I think you can get a first plus for Tony Pollard almost, maybe. Like, you can get some good pieces for these guys. Pollard, you can able to tear down to a running back you like in this class and maybe pick up a first, maybe like a guy like, not Bijan, not Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe you could get like a guy like Charbonnet and a pick as well on top of that. Or Condre Miller plus a first and maybe a little bit more on top of that kind of thing. Like, Tony Pollard's a solid guy. He's pretty young, 25, 26 years old. He's just taking over that backfield fully. He's going to be fully released this year. A lot of guys over on Underdog even, he's pegged as a probably top 6 running back to score this year. So a lot of people have a lot of high expectations for him this year, and I think you could capitalize on that opportunity. If you want to go on a fire sale and sell all these players and get a ton of picks, I don't think it's a bad idea whatsoever. You just have to find the right buyer for him. Jared Goff, he's another guy that, like, if you're not going to win this year, I would say you want to probably go sell. he's a guy that's going to be good for a few years that I think of teams that are win now. Like, yeah, Stafford is obviously a guy you would prefer to sell because he's older and he's probably closer to the end of his career. But Jared Goff, I feel like, is going to be a guy that's more appealing to those win-now teams because he's available for the next few years. And if we're going to be starting that fire sale, we don't want these guys that are scoring points. We actually prefer a guy like Matt Stafford, I guess, to somewhat keep because he could ultimately fall off faster and make us get a better pick, like being the first overall pick, to get a Caleb Williams, to get a Marvin Harrison Jr. type of thing. So another guy that's obviously going to be very appealing to win-now teams would be Cooper Kupp. Obviously, it's going to be very hard for you to sell him just because it's Cooper Kupp, and he has the potential to be wide receiver 1 on the year. But sometimes you got to do things that you don't like to do, and if you're not going to go all in this year, I don't think there's any point in being middle of the road where you would get not as good of a pick. So I feel like selling and starting that rebuild would be ultimately a better choice for this team. Because if we have any injury in the wide receiver room, any injury in the running back room, like, I don't think we have the depth to pull it off. Running backs maybe, but like if it's in the first 3 weeks, like let's say James Cook goes down week 1, then for the next 2 weeks we got Tony Pollard and Jerick McKinnon as our starting running backs, like, or Tony Pollard and Devin Singletary, and who are we filling in that flex spot? That flex spot's gonna have to be Darius Slayton. You're telling me you feel confident in that every week? Like, I know we're not always banking on injuries, but you got to plan for the worst to happen, in my opinion, for Dynasty. And that's why you got to have the depth. It's not always about just scoring points in your lineup, but you have to have the depth, especially when it comes to these Dynasty leagues where we're starting 3 receivers. We have 2 flex and a super flex kind of thing. So I think the best direction for this team would be to start selling. I know it might be hard. People don't want to buy those high-end expiring guys, but Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp, those are 2 guys you can get a lot for right now, even though they're old. A winning team, a team that's trying to push for the chip right now, I think they'll be willing to pay a good bit for them, just trying to go win it all now, because those are guys that could secure the win for their team outside of injuries. Like I said, Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett might be guys that are a little bit harder to sell, but you still could feel the market out, see what's out there. Get some younger players, get some extra picks for next year. Like I said, we're missing a second next year, which kind of stinks, but we have that backed up by an extra second in 2025. So I think this team's in a pretty solid spot. Like, I would say this team is a little bit better than Dan's team. He's got a little bit more direction, as, like I said, he can either choose to go all in now, or he can or he can start selling kind of thing. But ultimately, I think he would benefit from pinpointing that direction that he wants to go, whether that's win or sell. But anyway, guys, I want to say thank you guys for joining out today. Have a good night, and let me know what you guys think of these teams. Let me know if there's something you would do differently. And see you later. Peace.